When giant monsters attack, and the world's militaries are completely powerless to stop them, things may look bleak.
But for every monster who seeks to destroy, there's at least one who acts as our planet's guardian, like with today's combatants.
Mothra versus Gamera, the queen of the monsters versus the guardian of the universe.
He's one fish mob and I'm three crab mob, and it's our job to see who would win an all-out fan war.
The year was 1961, well over a decade since the King of the Monsters was last sighted wrecking Tokyo.
And despite the giant monsters that the hydrogen bombs brought, the country of Rolisica decided to turn the uninhabited infant island into their own nuclear playground for the sake of more tests.
Turns out, the island was inhabited, and despite the lethal radiation and powerful blasts transforming the once lush island into a nightmarish hellscape, life managed to survive, all huddled around a small spring sacred to the natives. And it is this place where they worship their goddess, another giant monster.
Unlike the other hideous and destructive beasts of our universe, Mothra is a divine and benevolent monster who sought to protect humanity, as well as the world, from monsters that threatened it.
But that doesn't mean Mothra hasn't caused her fair share of destruction. But that was usually under specific circumstances, be it brainwashing or humanity overstepping their boundaries, like the time this businessman kidnapped her priestesses, the Shobijin.
So she gets mad because someone stole her Barbie dolls?
It's more like she's a guardian first and foremost. She, much like the Peanut sisters, would rather not have to get their hands dirty, and would rather play the part of diplomat.
But when boring old diplomacy goes flying off the table, Mothra is more than willing to get down and dirty. She lifts and throws monsters weighing roughly 25,000 tons with ease, is tough enough to survive building-busting attacks with only minimal damage, and did a kamikaze while on fire and somehow came out of it alive. Heck, she can destroy entire cities just by flying.
She's able to withstand the heavy damage of artillery shells, volcanic burns, and even Godzilla's atomic breath.
For reference, Godzilla can do this. That never gets old.
Looking at the calculations provided by this site, Godzilla was firing his atomic breath with enough force to push the King of the Monsters himself into flight. To do this, he would have to spit out a force equivalent to 2 kilotons of force.
Or simply put, enough power to nuke an entire town.
And with her immense wingspan, she can fly at speeds of up to Mach 3, and is fast enough to keep up with monsters who traverse outer space in a matter of minutes.
Like one time, Mothra had to fly out of the solar system, which took about 2 years for Mothra to accomplish. With help from our friend Ghost Host, we know from Earth to the solar system's edge is about 93 million miles. And given that a single year has 8,760 hours, this means Mothra traveled at speeds equal to 5,000 miles per hour when not restricted by Earth's atmosphere.
But why was she leaving the solar system? Well, because a meteor was heading straight towards the planet.
While we never did see Mothra redirect this meteor, we can estimate that because it was stated to be able to completely destroy the Earth, she would still have to resist around 59 zetatons of force in order to do this. But that's not the only thing she can do.
She can create powerful whirlwinds, release a toxic poison powerful enough to paralyze monsters like Destroya, and unleash a flurry of scales that reflects any beam-based attacks, sometimes to the point of literal explosions. Though it's good to note that these two attacks specifically, if used for a prolonged period, will render her flightless. As such, Mothra usually uses these as a last resort, opting for more practical weapons like her stinger, electric shocks, telepathic communication, antenna lasers, unleashing powerful bursts of light,
or fire darts from her butt. And if rectal warfare is not good enough, she can also barf webs. But isn't that a spider thing?
Both the adult and larval form of Mothra are able to do this, and their silk is strong enough to bind even the strongest of kaiju, like Godzilla and King Ghidorah.
And when a battle is finished, she can literally banish monsters to the unknown, magically sealing the offending monster away, trapping them in place. Just like that one prison guard, she doesn't just lock you up, she throws away the key.
Of course, this prison is still escapable. I mean, Godzilla managed to get out of it in the next movie.
In a way, I'm kind of glad we have Barbie's OC monster protecting us. Determined to protect the planet, fighting with other monsters or going in alone, even in the face of certain death, Mothra, no, her species in general, are some of the few monsters out there to have actually defeated Godzilla more than once. You know, the unrivaled king of the monsters who can rival planet-destroying aliens and nigh godlike machines?
Oh, actually, she doesn't protect us per se.
What?
Well, while she has protected people in the past, don't forget, her place on Earth is to be its protector, and will defend it from anything that threatens it. And, unfortunately for us, humanity has caused Mothra and her followers plenty of grief in the past. And if humanity were to ever truly become a threat to the planet, it's likely Mothra would treat us no differently than any other monster out there.
True, but I'm not too worried. After all, she's a glass cannon.
While Mothra's lightweight nature makes her one of the fastest monsters in her world, it also makes her one of the most fragile, making her more susceptible to critical and lethal injury than the larger, tankier monsters she shares the planet with. Especially when it comes to her wings. If they are heavily damaged in any way, she will be unable to fly.
And while she does have plenty of victories up her metaphorical sleeve, she's lost plenty of battles herself.
In fact, it can be argued she has one of the worst win-to-lose ratios in the Godzilla universe, which is why every Mothra that ever existed will lay an egg, to always ensure that when she does hit the bug zapper, a new Mothra will take their place in what is believed to be a perpetual cycle of rebirth.
Good thing the moths in my closet don't do this.
My point is, I wouldn't doubt the power of Mothra, even if she is kind of prone to injury. She is the guardian of Earth, and when the light of the planet's protector shines bright, all evildoers will be sent back to the darkness where they belong. Many millennia ago, back before modern history even began, an ancient civilization existed. One that became so advanced, they discovered how to create life, and through that, decided to play God.
And the first thing they made? Giant destructive monsters, that's what.
But surprise, surprise, these monsters quickly went out of control, wiping the Empire out in its entirety. To fix this mistake, they decided to play God one more time. This time, not to create a destroyer, but a guardian that would protect the planet long after they're gone.
And what they got was a multitude of giant turtle monsters. But after this conflict, only one of these creatures survived, and for thousands of years he would slumber. Until a plane carrying an atomic bomb crashed where he was sleeping, accidentally unleashing the last great scientific marvel created by these ancient people upon the modern world, Gamera.
While there was distrust of the turtle initially, Gamera would go on to protect the planet from any number of threats, from other monsters to aliens to fallen guardians, acting as its sole guardian and friend to all children.
And why wouldn't he? This giant turtle can toss giant monsters around like it's nothing, walk through buildings like it's wet tissue paper, or rip other monsters like he was carving a pumpkin. He even once smashed a meteor to save a couple of kids.
The meteor in question looks like it's about as big as Gamera, who is 80 meters in height, and it should have a volume of about 268,000 meters. Going by these estimations, Gamera would have to have hit this meteor with a force of up to 0.44 tons of TNT. enough to level a large building. And Gamera's strength is only rivaled by his durability, so much so that you can call him more of a survivor than a tank. He's been impaled, suffered heavy blood loss on a regular basis, was frozen alive, fell from the atmosphere, and even survived point-blank explosions that can level entire cities.
The blast in question took place in Sendai, which is about 52 kilometers, which would mean the explosion equated to around 400 megatons of force, making it almost as powerful as a W-88 nuclear warhead, which is 8 times stronger than the bomb we dropped on Hiroshima.
A lot of his durability most likely stems from his shell, which is extremely durable and lined with sharp edges that can slice a kaiju in two. But it's not just his shell. His body naturally creates a plasma barrier to reflect enemy projectiles and is almost impenetrable to any attack.
But if Gamera doesn't feel like sticking around and taking it, he retracts into his shell for extra protection. Or he can fire rockets out of his limb sockets and freaking fly? Only in Japan does this make sense.
With this, Gamera can fly up to speeds of around Mach 3, allowing him to ram into other monsters with mountain-busting force, leave the planet's atmosphere in minutes, and keep up with and evade attacks from similarly speedy monsters. Or, if need be, to fly to other solar systems and back in a single day.
With a fair estimation, the closest star system is 24 billion miles away. The trip in one day Gamera made meant he was traveling up to 700 million miles per hour at bare minimum.
And while Gamera isn't afraid to get his claws dirty, he is more of a tactical fighter, using the first round to see what his adversary can do and strategize on how to defeat them, and then the second round to defeat them.
And lucky for him, his creators pre-equipped him with the tools for the job. He can slice through enemies with his elbow spikes, bite into enemies with his large tusks, and even breathe fire. You know, I'm starting to think the only reason Daiei made Gamera was to compete with a certain giant lizard.
And it took you this long to realize that? In any case, Gamera can unleash a giant plume of fire hot enough to burn underwater and vaporize any lesser monster caught within it, or to delicately repair spaceships. Or if he doesn't want to waste breath on anything, he can just superheat his fist to crispify his enemies.
But if he wants a more devastating use for his fire breath, he can spit balls of fire to blow enemies to pieces. And that's just the bare minimum. These fireballs can blow up entire hillsides or vaporize city blocks. But if worse comes to worse, he'll overload his internal furnace, the part of his body that lets him breathe fire, until it explodes.
He can release electromagnetic shockwaves to disorientate enemies or blow up projectiles, manipulate plasma for devastating attacks, and control gravity around him to redirect beam attacks.
When he is injured, he's able to recover from these injuries impossibly fast. Wounds that nearly take his arm off are gone in mere hours, organs like eyeballs are magically back, and holes in his shells are magically gone in the next movie. But things like entire limbs are unable to regrow.
We don't know how it works exactly, but we do know that substances like Aurelium assist with his regeneration, which brings us to one of Gamera's more unique abilities. Gamera gets his strength from many sources, heat being the most obvious, able to eat fire to heal all wounds, but he's also able to absorb energy, like Barugon's rainbow. To us, it vaporizes anything. To Gamera, it's like a heat lamp. It's even stated that nuclear weapons would only empower him, which is consistent considering it was a nuke that woke him up in the first place, and if a monster does steal Gamera's energy, he can take it right back.
But his most well-known power source is mana, the life force of every living thing on the planet. With this, he can gather large amounts of this life energy for devastating attacks like the Mana Beam or the Vanishing Plasma Fist.
Being a fan theorist here for a moment, but it's possible his connection to mana is what allows him to telepathically contact certain people who are connected to him, which is how some people are able to become his priestesses, who would aid Gamera in his mission to protect the Earth.
I'm guessing there's a catch.
Gamera is a guardian of the Earth first and foremost. In fact, his biggest fear is that humanity itself will one day become the planet's greatest threat.
And yet he will make exceptions for children?
Yes, it's just who he is in nature. He'll always put the safety of a child before his own, even if it means he has to mutilate his own body or sacrifice his own life in their stead. Like one time, Gamera was infected by an RNA virus created by the not Illuminati that turned him into the very creature he'd defend the planet from. But because of one child's faith in him, he resisted this and used the last of his strength to wipe out the secret society once and for all.
Also, this beam had to be traveling 10,000 miles per second if you're curious. But even in death, I have a weird feeling this isn't the end of Gamera.
Correctamundo. You see, Gamera exists in a cycle of rebirth. Should he ever die, he will be born anew, ensuring that Earth always has a guardian looking out for it.
And as long as Earth needs a protector, Gamera will be there to face down whatever terrifying or downright insane monster comes their way. For he is not just a friend of all children, he is the absolute guardian of the universe.
Alright, the combatants are set. This battle shall have no prep time, no outside help, or home field advantage.
It's time for an all-out fan war. Alright, we really need to keep Turtles far, far away from Fan War.
Both monsters would put up a good battle, and both could reasonably win this fight under the right circumstances. But what it ultimately came down to was 6 categories: strength, agility, speed, abilities, durability, and experience.
Right off the bat, Mothra and Gamera were both pretty even when it came to agility, able to maneuver and dodge around monsters and all types of attacks with ease, as well as not really having an edge in experience over the other, as both have gone up against plenty of monsters, including some that are not too different from each other.
So far, both are pretty even, but not when it comes to strength. Both are able to knock down, throw, and drag monsters significantly larger than themselves on a fairly regular basis. To break this tie, we looked at their feats regarding meteors.
While Gamera outright destroyed his, it was a much smaller rock compared to what Mothra had to redirect. And sure, she wasn't going to destroy it, but she would still have to resist enough power to destroy the planet. But what Gamera lost in strength, he made up for in speed.
Both consistently reach Mach 3 speeds when in Earth's atmosphere, but we can deduce who is overall faster at max by how long it took for them to leave the solar system.
For Mothra, it took about 2 years, while Gamera achieved something similar in the span of a day, which would make Gamera 132,000 times faster than Mothra.
When it came down to who had the better abilities, it also didn't favor the Queen of the Monsters. Mothra may have a wide variety of attacks to pull from, but compared to what Gamera's endured, the likelihood of her causing worthwhile damage is unlikely, as he's already withstood similar attacks before.
Unlike Gamera, whose spike, shell, and claws alone could do more significant damage to Mothra's wings, taking her out of the fight entirely. And his overall abilities are just significantly more destructive and practical in battle.
In truth, whereas Gamera could absorb energy and fire around them to recharge, redirect certain attacks using gravity, or disorientate Mothra with his EMP blast, Mothra just had no reliable counter to any of Gamera's abilities. Sure, Mothra could deflect Gamera's fire with her scales or subdue him with poison, but both are last resort weapons and effectively cripple her when used.
Heck, some of her powers actually have the potential of empowering Gamera even further. And while Mothra can always seal Gamera away, that's an ability only shown to be used after the fact. While Gamera's finishing moves, including the suicide attacks, are all designed to be used in direct combat.
And given the stuff he's survived before, there's nothing to say Gamera wouldn't just shrug off any of Mothra's own kamikaze attempts.
Which finally leads us to the deciding factor, durability.
Both have survived attacks that can level entire cities and withstand abilities similar to what the other can do. But there is a very big difference between both monsters. Mothra is a glass cannon, and has a history of being injured, crippled, or straight up killed in combat.
While Gamera is a full-on tank who survived a plethora of other life-threatening injuries and shrugged off attacks that would have taken Mothra down almost instantly. Like, if her wings could severely be burned by Rodan's fire, just imagine what would happen if she was hit by Gamera's fire, which has incinerated similar-sized kaiju.
No matter how you put it, it was just pretty clear-cut. Mothra may be a fearsome beast, but between Gamera's absurd endurance, greater speed, destructive capability, and more effective powers, Gamera was fated to squash this bug.
Mothra came into this fight like a pro Gamera, but I can see she was just winging it.
The winner is Gamera. But if you want to see a fight between Gamera and Godzilla, here's what you have to do. Hit that like and subscribe button and share this video. If this video gets 5,000 likes, there will be a matchup. But until then... Next time on Fan War.